Hello, everyone. My name is Kashawn Hopkins. I'm an instructional technology specialist from Oklahoma Public School Resource Center. And in this Tech Talk, we're going to be talking about designing innovatively. Um, I'm going to be pulling from the ISTE standards here. I'm going to continue the series that I'm on where I was taking a look at a bunch of different ISTE standards, seeing if we can do a bit of a deep dive, combining a bunch of different things that we've learned, like, for example, tech integration frameworks, the ISTE standards, tools that we have talked about before, and sort of combine them into sort of like an application piece. So the focus on this one is going through the design process and seeing how you can incorporate tools to do that. And I'm going to use Coggle as a highlight for that, but by no means don't think of it as like one tool to solve all your problems. Just think about it as this is like a really good example to kind of get yourself started, and you can incorporate other tools that you feel comfortable with as well. I'm joined here with my colleague. You should get to know him. He's fantastic, and he's here with us today. Go ahead and take over, Kurt.
Hello, I'm Kurt Bernhardt. I'm the technology director for OPSRC, and Kashawn and I make up the technology team here. So if you need any type of technology help, just reach out to us and Kashawn will let you know how.
Yep. I think the best way of going about that is through our email. We try to check it as regularly as possible. You should hear back from us. If you shoot an email to techteam@opsrc.net, that'll shoot an email to both of us, and we'll try to respond as quickly as we can. Moreover, there is slides to this particular tech talk that we have here. Now that I think about it, I think this, hold on, let me make sure this is the correct one. I'm having suspicion. Okay, not quite this one. All right, I'll get us a new link. But a good way to go through these slides, especially if you're listening to the recording right now, I'll make sure whoever's here will get it. But for at least this recording, probably the best way to get to it is through the place where you got access to this. So if you want access to the slides, go to opsrc.net/tech talks. I'm going to click on that so you can see a little bit if you're unfamiliar with it. On here we have at the very top our upcoming tech talk. So not only that I'm talking about design innovatively with Coggle, I talk about creative communication and selecting tools. Like if you have a bunch of tools, how do you figure it out and how do you use that to empower your learners? In the middle of the page, you have a place where you can suggest future tech topics or tools, anything technology related, shoot it at me, and I would love to do a deep dive, do some research, and see what I come out with. And at the very bottom, we have a little treasure trove of archived tech talks. There get quite a bit of them on here. We have them divided by technology standard, which we're growing right now, tech integration models, special interest topics, and individual tech tools. So check all that stuff out. They got recording dates, videos, and presentation slides. And you don't want to miss out on those slides because I try to put in everything that I found in my research, try to share any goodies with you, any links that you might need. So if you ever need to refresh anything that I've talked about or extend any of the learning, I try to provide you with what I have. And I mean, you can take it wherever you want to take it. And yeah, all the stuff is here for use. Feel free to share it. So with this particular tech talk, I'm going under the assumption that you already know some things. Like, for example, the technology tool that I'm going to use to showcase this particular ISTE standard is Coggle. So I'm just going to assume that you've already logged in, you've used it, you kind of know what it's about. If you don't, you can always refer to the individual tech tools section here on the Tech Talks page. You could just scroll down where it says Coggle. I did it back in July. It's fairly the same tool since then. And so it's pretty up to date. You should check it out. I got a video, I got a slide to go deep dive in the Coggle if you've never used it before. But the basic idea, it is a tool that you can use to create flowcharts and mind maps. And it's a really good way. I think I combined it in a section where I was really talking about the power of visual communication, like being able to put all your ideas out there where everybody can see it, and then you can do things. You can generate ideas, you can brainstorm, you can put yourself through like an iterative process to try to create and test and build and model solutions to problems. And so I talked a bit about it when I first talked about Coggle, and here is me doing my best to expand on it. So let's jump into my objective here. After this tech talk, educators will be able to integrate Coggle in their classroom to help solve problems by engaging in the design process here. So yeah, that's what I want to try to help you get to. A little schedule so you have an idea of how our time is going to be used here for the next 25-ish minutes. I'm going to take the 1.4 ISTE student standards, which is for innovative designer. I want to go into that, break it down into some useful pieces that I want to try to highlight there. Then I'm going to take that standard and connect it with the tool that we have here, Coggle, and say, like, how can this tool be used to meet this standard here? What are some like actual applications, things that you can take to your classroom right now and connect it with this standard here. Then I want to take that standard. Each ISTE standard is broken down into substandards, and so I want to give a little bit of overview on what are the substandards for this 1.4 innovative designer standard. And then finally, I want to combine the applications that we've talked about in Coggle to the substandards here. And so I'm kind of laying out the standard, then laying out the tool, and then connecting the tool back to the standard itself. So you have an idea of if you're going to use this tool, if you're going to bother to invest time and try to support students working through this tool, what kinds of things, specific things, are you going to get out of it? So that's what I'm going to try to attempt here through this process here. And I've even created a little Coggle flowchart situation go over here, and a little example problem, little open-ended situation that we have here. And then once I'm done, I'll share my resources. We'll wrap this up, and yeah, and then we'll take this recording here and then put it where everyone can access it. Let's get started, everybody. So first, we're going to start with the standard itself. I grabbed it word for word. If you don't know where your standards are, on the bottom left-hand corner, I try to link everything that I've used here. And so you have access to the standards. In fact, let me show you what the page actually looks like here. And so you have ISTE standards for students. If you scroll down, you can see all 7 standards. If you go to 1.4, you go the innovative designer standard. And if you click on it, you'll get these sub-standards. I'll get back to those in a bit, but I want to focus with the standard on the top. I got it word for word here, which I'm going to read aloud. Students use a variety of technologies within the design process, within a design process, to identify and solve problems by creating new, useful, or imaginative solutions here. So a few things that I want to point out here. First of all, why I would argue this standard is important. And so first of all, having students being able to identify and solve problems here. Students are always going to have to deal with their problems. It's not going to always be a defined, clear problem. So having like an open door, like your first step, like what is the thing when students are encountering a problem, just having them have like a go-to way to begin this full process of figuring out, okay, what am I supposed to do? How do I generate ideas? How do I test solutions here? And identifying is always the first step here, is realizing, okay, why is this situation that I am in a problem? How can we figure that out? Because if it's not a problem, why bother go through this process? And then over here, and then hopefully at the very end of that, we will solve the problem. We can do that by this other part, creating new, useful, and imaginative solutions. So those 3 words right there, new solutions, we're trying to figure out, okay, we didn't have these solutions before, because if we had them, this wouldn't necessarily be a problem. So you can get through that through the identifying stage. We want these solutions to be useful, because you can come up with ideas, you can come up with potential solutions, but not all of them are going to yield the results you're going to want. And imaginative, I believe this requires, this basically requires you can get these ideas and these solutions from yourself, but I feel like this forces you to look beyond yourself, to research, to brainstorm, to collaborate with others, to get different ideas, because it's hard to, it's really hard to really come up with solutions that are really creative if you're only looking at one single source here. And so engaging with this standards is going to be arming students with these tools on how to get through and work through and try to solve these problems in a bunch of different ways. Now, the how on we're going to approach this, two things I've identified from the standard itself. One, a variety of technologies. I am only going to highlight one tool because that's all the time that I have, but I highly recommend look through tools that you are already using or look through tools that are readily available to you, maybe even throughout your school. There might be other your colleagues that are experts in the other tools, and it might be something that you can bring into this research process. You could look through the TechTalks, all that stuff is there. You could have a conversation with tech leaders that you know. And so there's lots of ways that you can really approach the how of accomplishing this standard here. You should really take a look and not, in this case, I'm focusing on one tool because of time constraints, but really look at your options here and see what is the best fit for your classroom and your students and what you're trying to accomplish here. Another thing that I want to point out that some people might not be familiar with is a design process. If your background isn't necessarily with this, it might be a little bit, it might be useful for us to take a little bit of time to focus on in at least one design process, because there's a lot of iterations of what this would look like, but a lot of them have the same core parts that you'll see here. So I selected one, which I'm put on this next page. I picked this from the Chicago Architecture Center on here. And it works through these different steps, and you can work these in order, but these indicated by the arrows that we have here are also processes that rely on the other parts that come before and after it here. So keep that in mind as you're working through this process. It is an iterative one, and one that relies on the different parts here on how it's being built. But the basic idea is this: step one, define your problem. Step two, collect some information. Step three, brainstorm and analyze ideas. Step four, develop solutions and build a model. Step five, present your ideas to others for feedback. And step six, improve your design. So I'm going to grab these steps here and try to see how can I get tools to match these steps, because this is the process that I want students to engage with, to have some kind of problem, an open-ended problem that students are going to grapple with, and have them walk themselves through this process, and using tools to help either enable this process or enhance it or take it to your classroom. Like if you're already doing this in some way, how can we take whatever you're doing and take it to the next level to help students reach out and collaborate with students more, or help the part that requires students to communicate what their ideas are going to be? Because ideas great once it exists in your head, but if you can't produce your solution in a way that makes sense to other people, it's not going to be nearly as useful. And so there's lots of different ways to approach this. But I'm going to attempt to grapple with it here. So let's say I'm looking at this process. I'm trying to come up with a problem for my students here. And I want to see how can that specific tool help students or enhance students through this process here. And so I've picked out a couple of applications that I know Coggle can do and try to map it over to different steps here. So this isn't necessarily in order. In fact, I grouped them a little bit together, and some of them I had to do a little bit of stretching here, but these are some 3 applications that I think you can do readily, that are features that are a part of Coggle that I think are going to be something that you could do in your classroom here. So this is something that you should definitely, if you haven't taken anything away quite yet, this is something that I think you should try to pull from. And I have taken the main, I've taken the main bits of these steps and place them on here. So if you see the numbers, that's me just taking, I just took a single word from them and put it on here. So on the define and collecting step, this is the part of the design process where you're thinking about, okay, why is this problem a problem? And then trying to gather information about whatever the problem is on here. So a suggested activity that I said was to create a mini map to identify needs, map out what is known, and try to identify some constraints. So I have an example problem on here, and I'm using Coggle to define it here visually for you. And I'm doing my best. I am by no means an expert at this stuff, but hopefully at least you're getting the idea on here. So my first step here is defining a problem. My problem is Kashawn Hopkins can't get to work on time. I'm imagining an imaginary version of myself on here, putting myself out there so you can see, yeah, this is a problem. Let's start by figuring out, what do I know? So I'm connecting it to this problem. What do I know first? And so there's different ways to approach this. This is where the open-endedness comes to it. But there's a few key things that are good to look at, like, for example, the constraints. Maybe I don't have a mode of transportation. Maybe when I'm waking up, I'm not feeling awake enough. I'm not feeling alert to get the problem. Maybe I got poor time management skills on here. And so these are different things that you can come in here and start just mapping out what are things that make this a problem. What's preventing me from getting the result that I truly want, which is to get on work on time? Or how about how I get to work? And so things that I know about that, I need to be here by 9. I need to wake up on time. It takes 30 minutes to get to the car and office. So this is just really spelling out the different parts, and I'm fleshing it out. So I have things like my needs. I need breakfast. I need a car. I need an alarm clock. And even other stuff like my consequences on here. So this is specific to my problem. I'm trying to detail out different parts of my problem. So you don't have to necessarily have all these parts. It really just depends on what the problem is asking for. So I put down consequences like letting my workers down. And so an emotional consequence, getting written up. I don't want to lose my job. Or the work doesn't get done. Maybe it's like a pride thing for me. And so I want to try to outline these as best as I can. So these are all useful bits of information that I'm going to highlight at the very beginning of my design process, and then use these different pieces and try to combine them, try to generate ideas, and look for a permutation that works here that would be a viable solution. Okay, other ideas. One thing that you can do with a Coggle is share it out with people. There is specifically, just in case you forget, on the top right-hand corner, you can click download this Coggle, and you can download it in these different formats to make it a little easier to share. Additionally, if you want people to come in and edit as well, on the top right-hand corner, if you click on the plus symbol, you can ask people to join your Coggle by shooting them an email on there. So those are different approaches you can use. And I believe those are really useful at the brainstorming step, where you're just trying to generate. It's the no idea bad ideas approach. To just like try to come up with stuff and see what solutions we might be able to come together. What's something that is worth pursuing here? And I think it's really good at the feedback step as well. Once you have an idea really detailed out, what is a way that we can make improvements on here so that everybody is a part of the process and you're trying to generate the best possible solutions that you can get on here. So sharing the project, I think, is going to be a great way to do it, either through the PDF or sharing it in a way that gives people power to add in ideas very freely. And so I did that. I just created another part of this problem here. I try to take a look at research. Another thing that you can also do inside of Coggle is add images as well on here that I don't have here on this, but I do have the text here. So I'm trying to come up with ideas, like, for example, on the portion of me trying to feel alert that I can wake up, I could do things like prepare food the day before, or I could try to get some sunshine, or I get slapped in the face. Like, so different. I'm just trying to throw up ideas on there to see like what sounds good, what looks like a viable solution that I could attempt. Now, not all of these are ideal, and maybe, I mean, these are extreme examples, but sometimes it would take showing these ideas to another person to figure out, oh, well, that probably wouldn't work every single day. I don't want to get slapped in the face. That would be too alarming on that one. So maybe I could axe that one, or rework that in a different way. Or I could try to research ways to get to work, like by horse or car, bike, public transit system. There we go. But maybe the place that you work at doesn't have a public transit system, or maybe it's really unreliable. You have to do research on that one. Maybe cars are way too expensive, and so you want to consider an inexpensive option that forces you to work out. So these are different ways that you can explore through and do some research and figure out whether or not these are going to be valuable. The last application I recommend that you do is create a flowchart. I think this is useful in the development portion of the process. I personally like steps because it's like, if I get lost, and I have to make a bunch of choices, I just follow the chart. There's some a systematic way to try to approach a problem. So this is creating a system around something that is ill-defined. So that's why I like flowcharts. Not necessarily the only way to go about it, but it is a way to go about it. And I think this is good for the improvement step. Like, as you are putting out these steps, sometimes you don't consider steps that that are going to be important to achieving the results that you want to. So you have to work through this process iteratively and make improvements in any way that you can. And so I tried to do that down here. Like I said, okay, here's my problem. Here is a viable idea on things that I can do that would create a routine. If you start from the top, I start asking questions like, did you set an alarm on here? No, cool. Set the alarm 30 minutes before waking up. If you did, when you wake up, did you do stretches? Stretches are good for you. And we did the research before, and we know stretches gets you more alert on there. Okay, if you didn't do that, do your 15 minutes. Did you grab food? You're going to need food for the rest of the day. You can't just not eat for the rest. That would be very unhealthy. You need a healthy lifestyle to make sure that you're alert. No, great, get a breakfast bar. And so this is just trying to impose that structure on that. Okay, and this is just one problem. There's so many different ways to approach a problem. But the structures here are tools that students can always reach back into. They're always going to, they're usually always going to have to figure out, is this thing an actual problem? How do we figure that out? Or once we figure out something as a problem, what information is actually going to be useful here? What are some ideas that we can bring in? Who are some people that I can bring on here that might either be experts or just might have a great idea that I've never even considered? So this whole flowchart was created just by me, but it might be useful for me to talk to my colleagues. They might have something like different routines that they've already established. Like it's a wonderful thing that if you're engaging in the design process, if there's a model already out there, great. There's some ideas that are already done, research that's already done for you. And so you can really save yourself some time by comparing it with other models here. Okay. Taking a look at the time, we got about 7-ish minutes. And so I'll try to really paraphrase this bit here. And I think you got the meat and potatoes here. I think the substandards are worth looking at because they take these big ideas, these giant standards, and I've already tried to take it and break it down to usable pieces here, but substandards does that to another level. I've taken the standards here directly from the page itself and tweaked them or shortened them in a way. I just feel like these are slightly a little bit more digestible. It doesn't have all the bits and pieces that I think are good. So it would be worth your time to go back and take a look through these standards. But I've taken the ones here and tried to break them down a little bit here. So like, for example, 1.45 is to use a deliberate design process to generate ideas, test theories, and create artifacts. So I think it's worth your time to take a look through each of these standards and figure out, okay, what are some actionable steps here? What are some products that you can look through? So like, for example, 1.4a that I read through, you want students to be generating ideas, testing theories, creating artifacts, and engaging in themselves in this design process that we've already done. And I've taken each one of these here, and on this following page here, I've taken on the left-hand side, I've taken those applications that I've talked about. So these three here that I know are already connected to the main standard. And I've tried to connect them in a way on the right-hand side to the substandards that we have here. So like, for example, you just seen me create a mind map. It's a little out of order, but here we go. Let me swap these. But yeah, when I created a mind map, I did a visual way of generating ideas. I had a couple of things of, okay, I can approach this problem that I have by looking at, okay, what are some different ways to wake up? What are some different ways to look at to get to work? And you can expand beyond there as far as that you want to go. Or it's a good way to plan, manage, and consider your constraints on here. Something that you definitely want to look at is what is preventing me from actually achieving the solutions that I want to have. Because as I'm creating this idea that I'm proposing as a solution, I always want to keep in mind what are some things that are going to prevent me from getting to the result that I want to get on here. This idea that I have is a great start through this flowchart that I have on here. It gives me something systematic, but it's not considering, what if my car breaks down? Or what if I just have poor time management? Like, yeah, I want to set my alarm 30 minutes before waking up, but what if I stay up on the night before? So this requires looking through and referring back to the earlier portions of my design process and really considering this solution from all the different angles that I need to consider it from. So I recommend taking a look through and you can do this really with any tool. I'm doing it with Coggle right now, but any tool you can run it through this process and take a look and see what substandards am I actually trying to accomplish with this tool. What are some constraints on here? Does this sort of fall short? Like, for example, I love Coggle. I wouldn't talk about it if I didn't love it, but I understand some places that I feel like it's going to be weak. Like, for example, under the brainstorming step. So the second step on here, collecting information on the design process. These text boxes are great, but sometimes you want to illustrate information through like links and photos, which you can do through here, but maybe it might be easy somewhere else. So maybe you want to bring in a tool like Wakelet, which presents a bunch of different pieces of information all in like one single page here. Because after a while, I've tried to make this text as big as possible, but after a while, when you're looking at, like, if you've really expand out this process, you're going to have text that looks like this size on here, which is not fun to look at. And so maybe you might need to bring in a separate tool that will help illustrate this information or organize it in a way that makes sense. So when you share it out with somebody else, it's a little bit easier to communicate your ideas here. So yeah, that is why I harped on at the very beginning here when we're taking a look at the standard itself, is to really take a look and try to see a different variety of technology, see what's available to you. And really, when you're working with the tool and thinking about how it's going to be used, really think about its strengths, its weaknesses, the cost of actually using the tool itself, because students, I mean, so some students are going to thrive with this tool. Some of them are going to really struggle, and you're going to have to figure out a way to troubleshoot them either yourself or by incorporating other students that have worked with the tool. And so I think that is a useful way to go about and look through these different tools with your students. All right, I got about a minute and a half. If you've made it up to this point, thank you so much, everybody who's joined. I really do appreciate it. I hope you've gotten something out of this particular tech talk and engaging your students through the design process to work out solutions to problems. It's something that I think applies to really everybody. And it's a useful standard and a good way to have a bunch of tools in your tool belt here. These last couple of pages I just wanted to find, and then we'll be done here. So thank you. The next couple pages after my comparison between applications and substandards would be, I call them goodie pages. It's just filled with links that I think are going to be really useful. At the top are the ones about Coggle. At the bottom, I shared just what I used when I was talking about the design process. Like I said before, I'm not really an expert. I'm no engineer or anything like that. But there's loads of resources out there. If you just type in design process, you will get tons of different versions of the design process, but a lot of them have similar common threads to them. And so you can find the one that makes the sense to you. Or in fact, if you want, you could, if you've established one with your students, you could probably expose them to other ones as well. And so, yeah, take a look. The next page is about technology integration. I've referenced them and used them, but I didn't really explicitly identify the places that I was using them. If that kind of stuff is interesting to you, I have a whole page dedicated to the stuff that I used as a sort of background characters, at least in this particular tech talk, but still nonetheless very useful on how to approach incorporating these different standards. So please take a look when you get an opportunity, or you can have a conversation with me. And then finally, my last page. Thank you, thank you, thank you, everyone either watching the recording or helping make all of this, the Tech Talk, happen. I really do appreciate it. These are a lot of fun to make. These are a lot of fun to present, and I'm excited to get. But we took a little break before this one, and so I'm excited to get right back into it. If you could take a moment, I have a link to the evaluation on here. It is case sensitive, so keep in mind you want to capitalize that K there. As a reminder, I'm Kashawn Hopkins. I'm joined here with Kurt Bernhardt. Thank you, our tech director over there. If you want to reach out to us, do so through techteam@opsrc.net. If you want more of what I'm doing on here, I assure you there will be more, and there is more. Go to opsrc.net/tech-talks. And if you like what we do here, give us a shout out through social media. We got all the 4 buttons on there. You can click on any one of them and they will link you to fun places where you can engage with the community. Not just me and Kurt, but other people who are engaged with. There's really exciting stuff happening all across Oklahoma, and you don't want to miss out on that. But with that, I think that's it for right now. I will see you all next time. And yeah, thank you. Have a great day, everyone.